Please pardon my messy kitchen. I couldn't get it to work on the computer in my office, so you're just stuck with my messy kitchen and my dog who wants his butt scratched. So, which is the odd sound of his little toenails going click, click, click as he happily swivels his butt to get scratched. All right, enough. Anyhow, thanks for joining me tonight. And tonight we're going to look at Mark Wojcik's Pennsylvania, which also happens to be Larry and my Pennsylvania. I'm starting with the big picture map here because I make comments about how the whole midsection, the whole top third of Pennsylvania especially, is forest and thinly populated. And so, you know, you say that especially to people who are from more populated area and they go, yeah, small towns. I want you to look at this map. Do you see the Allegheny National Forest? Do you see how few towns are listed? Mm-hmm. There's the Allegheny National. Kane is where Mark Wojcik's monster preserve, cryptid preserve is. Mm-hmm. Notice how there is nothing around it. And I think that's one of the things when you drive across I-80 here, which you can see goes across the middle of the state, or actually divides kind of like the upper third of the state. You drive through a lot of forest. Now, I think most of that land is technically owned by timber companies and coal companies, but there are many times in between the different exits that you don't see towns. You don't even see a break in the forest. You might see a gap where they have run power lines, but not always. So when I talk about this area being very wild, very forested, and maybe there are things living in the woods that people don't believe in, this is the kind of terrain I'm talking about and why that's kind of possible. So let's go visit Connie Lake. Now, Connie Lake is the nearest town of any size to where Mark Wojcik lives. And we're going to look at some of the pretty pictures from there. It really is a gorgeous place. Connie Lake Park was founded in the late 1800s as one of those railroad parks, the end of the trolley line. And it is a natural lake. It's a glacial lake. It's actually pretty deep. And there are summer homes all around it. And then Connie Lake Park, unfortunately, has fallen on hard times in most recent years. But for over 100 years, it was quite the destination as a family park. Pardon me. So as a family park, this video is just going to be a little snake bit, pardon me, that hasn't quite survived, but the area catered to tourists. And so you do have Connie Cellars Winery. Wineries have become quite a big thing in that corner of Pennsylvania. You still have a boat show. There you go, right at water level. But you get an idea of what those cottages and summer homes look like. And some of those are lived in year round. Of course, there's a party boat. And get a little bit of the greenery there around the winery. I don't control the pictures that are here. I just try to find representative ones. There you have one with a skim of ice on it. It does get pretty cold up there. And ducks, always ducks. So this gives you an idea of Connie Lake itself. And then Connie Lake Park, as I said, it's finally gone into what's probably its final bankruptcy, but it was pretty cool for a very long time. Family-sized park, boardwalk along the beach, kiddie land that had an extensive number of rides. The Blue Streak actually makes a lot of the wooden railway coaster aficionados lists of classic roller coasters to ride. Put in some water slides there at the end. Nice selection of kiddie rides, classic rides. It was not a thrill park, and I think that's what kind of did it in. Hotel Connie, it shows up in several, in at least one of the Spell, Salt, and Steel books. And this is where Mark accompanies Sarah to one of her dinners and ends up running into one of the ghosts. The hotel is over 100 years old. I actually attended my junior prom there, and it is gorgeous on the inside, as we'll see. But well, that's not the hotel, but we will see the hotel again. And but it is said to be haunted by at least 4 ghosts. Now, let me just back up there and take a look at that carousel. It has probably been sold off by now, but those were all hand-carved wooden animals. And really gorgeous. So there we have the nearest park to Mark Wojcik, and he does mention being around the lake. Many of course, there's the mascot, Connie and Conrad Otter. Hotel Connie, to take a little closer look at the hotel itself. And there you kind of see the waterfront. One of the things that's really interesting with Connie Lake Park is that there's a whole street, a couple of streets inside the grounds of the park that are World War II era summer cottages inside the park where people still live. So it's going to be interesting as they divvy up the park to see what actually happens to those cottages, because they are technically on park land, but they also technically belong to people. So here's Hotel Connie, where Mark de-haunted one of their ghosts. You can see that it shows its age, but its function rooms are really very pretty. It's got a nice marina, a nice beach. Of course, you know, we're talking northwestern Pennsylvania, so it's not exactly like you can swim 9 months out of the year. You have to be hardy to get in there in early summer and early fall. But you can see that the reception area is very pretty. The lounge areas, it's got a lot of class. Well, except for the shark. So very comfortable place. And 4 reputed ghosts, even an antique telephone. There you see it done up for Christmas. So the spillway, in the beginning of Spell, Salt, and Steel, Mark Wojcik does battle with a Japanese fish monster at the Lionsville Spillway. And this is part of the State Wildlife Association. It is a fish hatchery. So if you look at the causeway here, this narrow road goes across part of a lake, and on the right-hand side, no, on the left-hand side, you see the spillway, and then there's a little bit of a dam, and then it's part of a fish hatchery. But it is, oh, come on. It's not going to show us. This really is where the carp, the huge carp, almost boil the water when you throw bread in to make them rise to the surface. And there are, of course, ducks fighting for the bread as well. See that semicircle there? That is where Mark did battle with the ninja, the Japanese fish monster. And I have posted my own pictures of what the fish look like, and I can do that again.
Said, how about the lamb and half of the other thing?
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's what I was going to
I
ask.
just realized there's
So the Eagle Hotel shows up in one of another one of Mark's books. That's the one where he ends up doing battle with the ghost of Matt Anthony Wayne. And you know, you'd be angry too if they boiled your bones, left the fleshy parts in Erie, carted your skeleton to Philadelphia to reinter you, and lost some of your bones along the way. That's actual historical fact. So the Eagle Hotel is in Waterford, which is a small town that hasn't really been important since the French and Indian War, although Washington did, Fort LaBeouf was Washington's encampment in Waterford during the French and Indian War. That doesn't matter at all to Mark Wojcik, but the Eagle Hotel is also said to be haunted. And he ends up there trying to deal with the spirits who are giving the fictitious museum on the 4th floor a run for their money. You can see it's an old building. It's a stone building. We're getting crotch shots of Revolutionary War heroes. I'm not really sure why. I think that was George Washington up close and personal. But the The food's actually pretty good here. At least it was the last time I was there, which arguably has been a long time. But and you can see they do have a little bit of a historic presence there with some items and some things from local history. I expanded that and ran with it for Mark because it was just kind of a fun way to bring another ghost into it in a actual local place. So the Eagle Hotel does exist. You can see it does have a restaurant in the bottom, which is what we mentioned under another name in the book. It's really quite a lovely place. And yes, it is supposed to be haunted, but I don't know that not by Matt Anthony Wayne. And I don't know that the spirit there has ever really bothered anybody, but it made for a good story. Now, the Connie Marsh shows up in some of Mark Wojcik's books, particularly when he dealt with the swamp monster. What you see here is I-79 going north, and this Connie Marsh, which locals refer to as Geneva Swamp, is deep enough that when they put I-79 through, they couldn't sink the pylons all the way down to solid ground. So they are sunk deeply enough that the pressure of the surrounding marshlands holds them up, but they aren't actually resting on anything. I think about that every time I drive over it because Larry's extended family is on one side of the marsh and my family was on the other side of the marsh, driven across that many, many times. Having said that, it's a naturally wild and beautiful place, and there are plenty of people who fish in it. I wouldn't recommend trying to go deer hunting. The land is not real solid. There are thick mats of all kinds of grasses, but it truly is a marsh, and you really don't want to go stepping around there. Now, Mark sometimes goes to Meadville. Meadville is my hometown where I grew up. We'll get to Greendale Cemetery, but that has figured in a number of our books with a naked gnome and at least 2 werewolf fights. Incidentally, my parents are buried there. We also see a lot of Meadville in one of the Storm and Fury stories. So this house, the Baldwin Reynolds house, is one of several mansions that were once along the French Creek canal. The canal is long gone except for a deep ditch now. Most of the houses have fallen into disrepair. The Baldwin Reynolds house is run by the local historical association. It's actually been kept up very nicely. But one of the buildings along that route is where the big ball is in one of the Storm and Fury stories, and the elaborate fireplace that I describe in that story is actually in that house and magnificent. So you can see we've got a lot of Victorian and earlier buildings. This is an interesting installation by the Allegheny College Art Department. It stretches a long way along the PennDOT fence, and you basically got an art department at the college that over a period of years took discarded street signs and highway signs and turned them into art representing different aspects of the town. Now here's Meadville City Hall with its original dome. The dome is long gone. They remodeled, tried to make it look a little more modern. It's still a very pretty building. And Diamond Park with its bandstand. This shows up again very much in the Storm and Fury story, where they are trying to track down a Hand of Glory and deal with some other problems. Got our Crawford County Tribute statues. We're back to the Baldwin Reynolds house, which is truly a lovely place. But it kind of gives you an idea. Meadville is past its prime. I'm not sure when its prime was, but it hasn't been for a while, probably the late 1800s through the immediate post-war period. Got balloons. And one of the major features, which again shows up in the Storm and Fury story, is the market house. Still in use. still a place for local farmers as well as people with baked goods. Here you see honey, some local crafts. If you ever get there, their cookies and their homemade candy are pretty fantastic. But it's a historic building that is well loved and well cared for. It's got a little diner in the back. And that story actually, the Storm and Fury story, touches on Meadville's role, believe it or not, in the Underground Railroad as a major stop on the way to Canada, because Meadville's only 3 hours from Canada. 3 hours, give or take. Your mileage may vary. Greendale Cemetery. Now, this was actually used as a location in, I think, Little Nikita. It is a beautiful cemetery. You can see the bushes there. They have 100-year-old rhododendron and azaleas and mountain laurel, and they are positively gorgeous. Here, this is one of the newer sections that you're seeing. You're glimpsing an older repaired stone there, but you also get to see the azaleas and the rhododendrons. The cemetery dates from about 1861. Pretty much everybody who ever had a road in town named after them is planted here. You can see how big those bushes sprawl. And you also get a sense for some of the age of some of the headstones. There's one whole stretch of headstones, I suspect that they were probably relocated, that are the old slate 1800 stones. Some of them are cracked, some of them are listing. You get to see a little bit here. And one of them has a tree growing partially over it. So when Mark is chasing the naked gnome through the cemetery, or Mitch and Jacob are fighting the werewolves in the cooling room, which this is an old enough cemetery that it has a cooling room to store bodies during the part of the year when the ground is too hard to dig graves. So there you see the arch, 1866. It's truly one of my favorite places to just roam because it is beautiful, especially in the springtime. Now, just as a level set, we're far enough north here that those rhododendron don't bloom until about the first week of June. So if you're used to seeing your rhododendron, your azaleas, your mountain laurel blooming earlier, not in Meadville, which is why I haven't gotten a chance to actually see them in a while. Tamarack Lake. So Tamarack shows up in one of the most recent Spell, Salt, and Steel books. And you may notice that at the moment, it looks a bit like a muddy trench. Well, that's because it's a man-made lake. It is part of the runoff and storm water and reservoir systems. And they drained it recently. Had to do some repairs on the apparatus that keeps it running. And so it is slowly refilling. But yes, at the moment, Tamarack Lake is a muddy trench. I didn't mention that in the Spell, Salt, and Steel book because we figured that it will eventually fill back up. When it has water in it, it's really a beautiful place. It does have fishing. I don't believe that you're allowed to have motorized craft on it because it is part of the water system. But wanted to prove that it does exist. And there you see some of the dam works. But for the sake of the book, we'll pretend that it has water in it. Now, in that Storm and Fury story, they visit the John Brown Tannery site looking for a hand of glory, as one does. And this is the John Brown's Body Lies Moldering in the Grave guy. He did have a tannery there for some period of time, lived on the site from 1825 to 1835. So this was before he got quite as famous. But it's a little piece of history. And since the Storm and Fury story tied in so closely with the Underground Railroad and some of the hiding places there, and looking for some of the relics that ostensibly were used in the story, then John Brown just seemed to belong. And you get a sense from looking just how rural this area is, even when you're looking at, I don't know who that is. This is Google Earth's idea of pictures. But even when you're looking at some of the towns, you're really not in any kind of a city. The nearest city of any size is Pittsburgh, which is about 2.5 hours south, or Erie, which is a small city, which is about 45 minutes north. Now we're going out to see a little more of the Allegheny National Forest. Again, a beautiful place, sometimes called the Big Woods. There we go. That's my Pennsylvania. Look at those hills. Look at those. Look at the water. It's a very, very hilly area. Not hard to understand why so many of the settlers were from Scotland and the UK. You look at northwestern Pennsylvania, you look at parts of the UK and you go, well, they just looked at it and said, I'm home. So a lot of hills, a lot of rivers. And again, you're in the Allegheny Mountains, but it is a truly gorgeous area. A little hard to make a living in, but lots of hiking and outdoor stuff out here in the Allegheny National Forest. So when Mark goes tramping around the forest, you now have a sense for how big it is, where it is, how extensive the woodlands are, and the fact that you really aren't close to anything. But it is a gorgeous place. And especially in the summer, it is just lush with greenery. And I can think that Kinzu Dam, of course, is out there. I think any cryptid would be pretty happy to be tramping around out here. They wouldn't get bothered very much, and they'd be in a beautiful locale. Tittyute also gets mentioned in the most recent Mark Wojcik book, which is Creature Feature. Small town. But to give you an idea, whenever we picture a small northwestern Pennsylvania town, this is the kind of thing you're looking at. It's a mix of Victorian homes and post-World War II homes. Not a whole lot of new construction. Maybe some gorgeous landscape around it. Tittyute is a very small town. In the book, it was home to a pack of bobcat shifters. You can see that they probably do just fine as shifters out here. Gorgeous, gorgeous landscape. Some of the Victorian homes, nice, solid Depression era and World War II homes, not a whole lot of new construction. We're not talking about high rises here. You're lucky if you get a building that was built in the 1970s that was like over 5 stories. It's not a real prosperous area. A lot of the young people have left because a lot of manufacturing and the jobs left. But for the people who have hung in there, it is a beautiful place and they're proud of their home, and rightly so. But Tittyute is considered, even in Western Pennsylvania, to be way out there. So when the people in the sticks think you're in the sticks, it gives you an idea of just how far in the sticks you really are. And then our last stop on the tour is Mark Wojcik's hometown of, acquired hometown of Atlantic, Pennsylvania. And you can see there's not a whole lot there. There is more in Atlantic, Pennsylvania than there is in Adamsville, which was wiped off the map with tornadoes in the late 1980s and has been slowly rebuilding ever since. But Mark has his cabin out in the woods. You can see there's woods. And he's got his garage mechanic shop in Atlantic. But there's not a whole lot of town to Atlantic. In fact, Google Earth is only giving us the map. And another indicator that you are in the sticks is when Google Earth hasn't even, gotten any of the blue lines here because nobody has driven through it to show you what it looks like. But at least, and pulling out here a little bit, here you can see Adamsville, which rebuilt from the tornadoes. But just to orient you a little bit, So Atlantic is over to the side here. We've been to Connie Lake, looking at some of those areas from the books, and Lionsville up here with the carp and the Japanese monster, Meadville over here. And then a whole lot of farmland and rural area, and then you're out in Atlantic. And the Conneaut Marsh right here in the middle. So that gives you an idea of Mark Wojcik's Pennsylvania, and our hometown, and my hometown, and Larry's hometown is a little further south, but definitely an area that we both have spent a lot of time in. It's a beautiful area, which is one of the reasons that we really wanted to set the series here, because it doesn't get its story told very often, and there have been a lot of interesting history there, as well as a lot of urban legends and ghost stories and tall tales. And so it's really fun to revisit an area, learn new things about it in the course of writing the books, and get to share it with people who might otherwise never have any reason to go visit that neck of the woods. So as you're reading Mark Wojcik, now you know what his world is like. Folks, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I apologize for the technical difficulty at the beginning, but I will be saving this as a video and posting it. So hopefully if you want to revisit it as you read the books, or if you just didn't make it here live, to share it with us. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back with more book location videos. Planning to do one of these once a month. Hope you're having fun, and I will see you online. Take care. Thanks.